Everyone, good morning. Welcome to our first webinar of 2021. We're really pleased to be here and back. Obviously, we took a break for December so we could all have a nice Christmas. Welcome back to you all. Good to see you in the room. See some very familiar names there. Good morning. Just a few shout outs. Good morning, Chris. Chris Chisman, nice to see you. Laura Milne, lovely to see you. Haven't seen you for a very, very long time. Madalena, good morning to you. Lovely to see you. And Sarah too. Just a few of the people who are joining us this morning. Today, we are talking about wellness in the workplace with a particular focus on mental health. This is a massive issue for the events industry. We've had such a disastrous year, business-wise. Many of us have come out of it at the end still in business and still earning some money, which we're really, really thankful for. Others of us haven't been so lucky, but this is impacting all of us. So today we're going to be talking about what we can really do to start improving our mental health and well-being, not just for us, but for our colleagues and within the businesses in which we run. So just a quick overview about Brightelm, because I'm often told we do the webinars and then people don't know actually what we do. If I could have the overview slide, please, Tara. Brightelm is an event services company specializing in event management services for associations and membership organizations. We deliver live and online. We have 7 core services: sponsorship, event marketing, program and content management, delegate services, logistics, exhibitions, all tied together nicely with good project management. We're here to help, so please do get in contact. Thanks very much, Tara. By the way, Tara is my colleague who very ably runs our webinars for us, so thank you very much. We are kindly joined today with support from Bristol Mind and also EventWell. So please do donate to these 2 charities. The links are in the chat at the moment. They're both really, really important support networks for us and EventWell, particularly for our industry. And actually today we are joined, our host today is Louise. Morning, Louise. Louise Warren. Louise is actually a co-founder of EventWell, as well as being an award-winning event planner, professional host and moderator. Has been working in the industry as long as I have, nearly 20 years. Wide array of global experience in all sorts of markets and around the world. And as I said, in 2017, she co-founded EventWell, which is the industry charity that supports mental health and well-being of event professionals. And she now sits on the board for the charity as head of education. Good morning, Louise. Thank you ever so much for agreeing to facilitate and host the discussion today. I'm really excited about it. Before I let you carry on, I had a question for you. We all, but I struggle. I'm very open with that. I have very bad days sometimes, but I'm very lucky, and the majority of my days are good. Is there something that you do to try and focus and remain positive?
Well, good morning. Thank you, Rob. It's lovely to see you again, and thank you to everyone that's joining us this morning. And yeah, it's a really important topic, and obviously a topic that I'm particularly passionate about. But yeah, in answer to your question with regards to what I do, I mean, yeah, as you say, it's been an incredibly tough year, and we are getting to that year point now. But for me, I think it's really important to kind of just remember to be thankful and grateful for what we have, even if we are going through a really sort of difficult time. I think it's really just to remember one thing to be grateful for. I've done it before. This is now my third time that I'm doing it, but I actually, on my Instagram, I have just started from January the 1st, my grateful year. So every day I post something on Instagram as just a reminder of what I'm grateful for today. And that can be anything from as small as, just being grateful to get out of bed, to a cup of tea, whatever it may be. So I just think, I know there's lots of things out there where people have journals that, request 5 things to be grateful for, but don't stress out about 5 things. Just one thing is all you need to keep that positivity going. But yeah, hopefully we will inspire others today through our chat and our conversations.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Louise. And I shall now hand over to you to carry on proceedings.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, as I said, thank you everyone for joining us this morning. I'm just going to go through a couple of housekeeping bits and pieces. So obviously we are using Zoom today. The webinar is going to be recorded and it will be available next week online. So if you have to pop off or anything, then obviously you can catch up with us when we put the link online. Obviously, if you're not familiar with Zoom, which I'm sure most of us are now, but there is the chat box. So if you have a question or you want to comment on anything that comes up for you in the conversations, then please, by all means, pop it in the Q&A button at the bottom of your screens. And obviously, as I say, the chat box is there as well. I do also want to kind of point out that obviously this can be quite a difficult topic for some people, so feel free if you want to ask a question but you don't want to kind of have your name up there, then please feel free to change the name on your screen on your Zoom link, or just make it anonymous if you would prefer, if it is a sensitive question. Also, obviously, obviously we are kind of talking about mental health and well-being, but if there is anybody at the moment who is in sort of having a difficult time or feeling sort of a sense of crisis, then there are links that we're going to put in the chat box and phone numbers for both Mind and the Samaritans. So there are places for you to talk to. I'm actually also a mental health first aider, so I'm absolutely 100% willing to talk to anybody after this session if anybody feels the need to have a chat. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce our wonderful panel. So good morning to Adam Bags, I should say. Sorry, Adam. Okay. Adam is joining us this morning. He's been in the events industry for a long time as well, but he has kind of sort of pivoted, I guess, if you want to use that word, pivoted. He's a solution focused hypnotherapist, and he's using more than 20 years knowledge of the event industry to help clients within the sector maintain mental health, improve their performance and combat these difficult challenges. During his engaging and insightful session today, he is going to discuss the challenges of the full stress bucket and also why the brain sees polar bears around every corner. I'm interested to find out more about that. So thank you, Adam, for joining us this morning. No problem. Also, I'm going to bring onto the panel Lisa Foote, who is training coordinator from Bristol Mind. Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Lisa has been with Bristol Mind as their training coordinator for over 3.5 years. She has over 30 years experience working for a variety of national and local mental health charities, corporate businesses and academia. Her focus is around workplace mental health and well-being, and her passion is to support employers of all sizes to improve the mental health of their workforce through guidance, training and consultancy. So thank you so much, both of you, this morning for joining us. So I'm going to kick off really with you, Adam, and basically kind of first question is, why did you switch from your career in PR to hypnotherapy?
Thanks very much, Louise. I was probably first introduced to hypnotherapy when I was about 8 years old, and I used to savage my fingernails. My dad was desperate for me to stop doing it, so he took me along to his hypnotherapist. It worked, I guess. I still don't bite them, but I was reintroduced to hypnotherapy about 15 years ago when I needed to have general anesthetic, and I was terrified of it. At the time, I was into all kinds of crazy outdoor sports, adrenaline junkie, but the idea of a general anesthetic was just far too much for me. And I saw a wonderful local hypnotherapist called Nicola, and it worked really, really effectively. I still see her as and when I need to, and she's helped me through a lot of tough times and a lot of other situations over the years. So I'm a real advocate of hypnotherapy and the benefits it can have to people. And over the last few years, I've been considering bringing it into what I was doing and looking at it more closely. And COVID basically just gave me the opportunity to really expand that learning and that passion and that desire to follow through with the hypnotherapy. So I'm now running a successful hypnotherapy practice alongside the PR work. I am still working in the industry, and I'm helping people both locally here but also across the industry with a range of issues, whether it's stress, depression, anxiety. Some people are seeing me for weight loss, smoking, all sorts of different things. And I'm finding it, from my point of view, very fulfilling, but it's great to work with so many people and just support people through all the challenges we're going through at the moment. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I've ended up, I guess, where I am.
Great. Yeah, no, it's an amazing thing that you're doing. I'm going to let you obviously do your sort of presentation now, but just to remind people, if anything pops up while Adam is talking, then please feel free if you have a question for Adam, because we will be answering your questions. So yeah, go ahead, Adam, and tell us a little bit more.
Brilliant. Well, what I thought I'd chat about today, and it's kind of one of the first things I talk to any of my hypnotherapy clients about, is sort of a very user-friendly, bespoke and non-medical review of kind of the brain and why we feel anxiety, stress, and some of the other issues that we do. It normally takes about 40 minutes. It's very bespoke to an individual, but I've sort of distilled it down to some of the key points for today. So it's just going to take about 10 minutes. And it's important to, it's really important to understand this and what your brain experiences, as it helps you understand some of our mental responses and why we feel anxiety and stress and some of the other issues that we do. So I'm just going to quickly share my iPad screen. Hopefully you can all see that. So if we have a look at the brain, it's the part of as you, and particularly the sort of the intellectual brain. I'm terrible at drawing, by the way, I should warn you that. Our brain is the part of us that interacts with the world, and it's the part of us that we use to be aware of our interactions together. And it's attached to this vast intellectual resource, the intellectual mind. And that we don't share with other animals. It's what makes you guys great event or association professionals. It's part of the part of us that allows us to even understand the concept of what an event or an association is, or something like that. And when we operate from this intellectual brain, we generally get things right in life. We come up with answers based on a proper assessment of the situation, and it's really positive. But there's another part of the brain, and it's the original primitive part, and kind of the central, most influential part of that is the amygdala. And it's often referred to as the fight, flight, depression area of the brain, and it's associated with two other primitive parts, being the hippocampus and the hypothalamus. And the amygdala is like our security guard. It sees fear and issues everywhere, and it immediately panics over things, and that's good. It keeps us alive in many, many situations. So imagine, for example, you leave here today and run into a polar bear. What's going to happen? Your anxiety is going to shoot up, and you're going to lose that intellectual control, and you're going to end up down here in the primitive mind. Things are going to happen. The amygdala is going to look at some instant responses, and it's going to check with the hippocampus, which is like a filing cabinet, and say, oh, what do I do in this? The hippocampus say, we're going to need to get out of here. So you might go sweaty. Your heartbeat's going to increase, your stomach might churn, your muscles are going to work better, and all these things are happening. And the hypothalamus is like a pharmacist that's providing the adrenaline and all the other things you need. And you're going to be off like a shot. You're going to get out of there. And under the circumstances, that's an entirely appropriate response, basically. You're going to be pleased. But unfortunately, it's sort of, it's the same in life and other things. When our anxiety goes up, and it can be a very gradual process, we start to lose that intellectual control. And to a greater or lesser extent, the primitive mind takes over. That's great if we run into a polar bear, but it's less so when we're trying to go about our daily lives of running events, perhaps facing redundancies, dealing with homeschooling and all the challenges we've got at the moment, and also at the moment, the fears for our own lives and that of our friends and the safety and well-being of the people around us. And at the moment, in terms of that metaphor, that polar bear metaphor, it's entirely appropriate to think of COVID and the pandemic as being a really, really big polar bear that the brain doesn't really know what to do with and how to deal with. Because in many ways, an actual polar bear is quite easy. The amygdala sees the bear, and because we've read books and we've seen films, and it's just massive, great thing with big teeth, we've got ingrained responses and neural pathways that are going to create a good reason to run. But COVID is different. We've got all these different messages. We've got the news stories. We've got the naysayers. We've got government changing their mind all over on all this kind of thing. And so our brain's really confused and it's unsure how to react. And the result is not just a lot of confusion, but it's also an incredibly high amount of anxiety. And in general, the primitive mind responds to these kind of situations in three different ways, which is depression, anxiety, and anger, or perhaps a combination of all three. Because as I said, it's scared of everything. So if our primitive mind thinks for one reason or another we're in sort of crisis or emergency, it's going to step in to help. And as I say, depression, anxiety, and anger are all fairly primitive and sensible opt-out clauses. And the primitive mind is also vigilant. If it's perceived there's danger around us, then it's going to stay on red alert, which is why a lot of us are feeling that level of crisis at the moment, because you switch on your phone, there's a news alert, you talk to a friend. It's impossible to have a conversation at the moment without it referencing the pandemic. And we don't always appreciate that we're anxious. Much of it can be subconscious, but it is there. So what happens with all this anxiety? Well, firstly, anxiety is, a huge part of it is caused by negative thinking. So it's not the events in our lives that cause a perception of crisis. It's our thought patterns that surround them. And every negative thought we have is converted into anxiety. So I'm guessing perhaps most of the audience here has had at some point a challenging meeting with a client, or maybe a member of your association, or you've got a challenging event coming up. You've organized or you've been to meetings like this 100 times before. It's going to be fine. You've organized events like this 100 times before. It's going to be fine. You've got it because you're an incredible professional. But you worry about it in advance. And in your head, you worry about it 50 times in advance. You get to the event or the meeting and it goes brilliantly. It goes exactly how it should go through. But you've had 50 beforehand in your head that were terrible. And you've got to remember the primitive brain doesn't actually know the difference between imagination and reality. So inside your head, you've actually run that event or been to that meeting 51 times. 50 of them were disasters. One was amazing. And the one that was amazing was the actual one you delivered because you're a professional and know what's going on. That's a lot of negative energy and emotion. And then if you're anything like what I tend to do, I'll look back at that meeting and instead of focusing on the 99 things I got right, I'll think about the one thing I forgot to do or didn't mention or whatever that the client never even noticed. And you start going down a spiral of looking back negatively on the thing. You still did it amazingly. We still do it fantastically, but we just keep thinking negatively, basically. And it builds up, and all this negativity goes into something we refer to as the stress bucket. So I'm just going to bring up my screen here again. So it all goes into a stress bucket, or what we refer to as a stress bucket. So it's going to be another one of my superb quality diagrams here. If you imagine it's a bucket, you can tell it's a bucket because there's a tap on it. A little bit of stress is good in our lives. A little bit of stress is what gets us up in the morning. It's what helps us get to work. It's what makes great event managers and that kind of thing capable of what they're doing. But other things start to go into the stress bucket. The homeschooling, all these different things, the issues, the annoyance with the boss or the clients and that kind of thing. And they build up and they build up, and small niggles go into the stress bucket. And COVID's a massive thing in the stress bucket, and it keeps going. And eventually it overflows. Eventually everything comes flying out the top. And that tends to be when we have that feeling of being totally overwhelmed. It tends to be that moment of crisis, and it can appear in different ways. Some people might have what you'd refer to as a panic attack. Others might get angry. Others might want to curl up in a ball and hide away somewhere, and kind of that feeling of depression, as it were. And it can often be the smallest things that push you over the edge. You know, COVID and all these other big things are right the way down the bottom of the bucket. But I remember some years ago, I was writing a proposal for a client, and it was back in the day when you actually printed things out, and I was using a hole punch, and the hole punch broke. There was loads of stuff down the bottom of my stress bucket, but it was the hole punch that pushed me over the edge. And I remember killing this hole punch and absolutely losing it over a hole punch. That was what pushed me over the edge. Just incredible that it was the small thing. But what we need to do, therefore, and to help us at the moment and throughout all of this ultimately, is we need to work together. We need to find out different ways to empty our stress bucket and find as many different ways we can to empty our stress bucket. Now, the body naturally does that through sleep. Good quality sleep will really help achieve that, and there's a much more detail I could go into as to how sleep really helps and helps you achieve that. But we're not all, we're not always all sleeping brilliantly, and sleep can have challenges, and sometimes the more stressed we are, the less well we sleep, and there's all sorts of issues around sleep. So we're looking for other ways to help reduce that stress bucket. Obviously, that's one of the things I do with my clients. Solution Focused Hypnotherapy as a way to reduce stress, but also a really nice balanced flow of serotonin can help with the stress bucket. Again, I can't go into all of the details, but if we've got a lovely balance of serotonin, which is this wonderful positive neurotransmitter that makes us happy, coping little souls, if we've got that balance, then it puts us in a really good place, helps reduce the stress bucket, and helps us get on with life and achieve all the things we want to achieve. And there's 3 ways that primitive man helped themselves get that balance of serotonin, and we can use those same 3 ways ourselves. One of them is positive action, so doing things that make you feel good. It can be going for a walk, it can be doing some art, it could be doing some physical exercise, all kinds of different things, but it's doing things. There's positive interaction, so being with and communicating with others in a way that makes you feel good. Now, I know we all want to see people face to face and be able to hug people and hold people and that kind of thing. That's tough at the moment, but we can still find other ways to have that positive interaction. So that's a really positive thing we can be doing. And the third one is positive thought. So thinking about things that make you feel good, thinking about the future, thinking about gratitude, as Louise mentioned earlier, just all those positive things. So positive action, positive interaction, and positive thought can help you really get a good balance of serotonin in your life. And if you can look for a little bit of each of those in every day, then you'll be well on your way to achieving positive change. And it's, as Louise said, it's just looking for the smallest things, the moment that made you laugh, the moment that made you smile. It's not necessarily looking for huge things. Just a little bit of each one of those can be a really good thing. And of course, on top of that, if you can find and get additional support from other people, whether they're mental health experts, friends, as Louise was saying, mental first aiders, anything like that, then in the long run, there's no knowing what you can achieve as we all look to make positive change going forward. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. Yeah, it was really, really insightful. Thank you for sharing that, and love your drawings. Don't be worried about your drawings. No, I mean, it really points out, seeing it visually. I think we all kind of benefit from seeing things visually to understand things. We have had a question from somebody.
Okay.
There, I'm just going to read it out. So they say, I am fortunate to be working in events currently. However, things can be slow and my motivation can go to very low levels. What is your advice on dealing with quiet periods and this lack of energy motivation? I end up scrolling on my phone for ages during work and then feeling guilty and anxious in the evenings that I haven't achieved anything. Adam, what would you?
So there's a couple of things. First of all, it's not necessarily a bad thing to have downtime. I think that's really important. There's some really interesting neuro research where they stuck a bunch of sensors on various people's heads and looked at the brain activity. And actually, the brain activity, when people are stressed and working hard, obviously lots of activity going on. But when people are idle, as it were, or doing nothing, actually what the brain's doing is it's dealing with some of the subconscious stuff. It's filing away some of the other things. If you imagine You know, you've got that drawer in the kitchen that's always full of rubbish, and you throw stuff in and you never get around to cleaning it out. The brain's kind of cleaning and tidying that drawer out if you can give yourself an opportunity to relax. So if you've got that downtime, find a positive way, or think of a positive way to use it, whether that's journaling, going for a walk, anything like that. But there's nothing, you don't have to be busy all the time. It's quite difficult, and I appreciate a lot of the event managers, not necessarily all the event managers I know, are reasonably highly strung and always on the go and a lot of adrenaline. So just bringing it down a level and letting the brain kind of have that opportunity to go into that default mode and do that is actually a really positive thing. But yeah, maybe not scrolling through pages and pages of Facebook and Instagram, I would definitely think is a good way to get away from that.
If anything, give yourself a social media break, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. Great, thank you so much, Adam.
No problem at all.
Yeah, obviously, we'll have you back at the end when we start our general conversation. But at this point, I'm going to bring Lisa into the fold, if I may. Hi, Lisa. Thank you for joining us today. So obviously, leading on from Adam, and Adam's obviously, I would say, relatively new into his hypnotherapy and what have you. But from your point of view and from your experience, Lisa, and sort of the last 20 years, you've been working in mental health. What have you seen that's different or changed over the last 12 months with the pandemic?
Yeah, a lot. Welcome, everybody. I think I've seen a real, quite a substantial increase in the awareness of mental health and well-being, which is a good thing. It seems to be talked about more often and acknowledged by people. People seem to be a bit more accepting of mental health issues, especially the more common issues such as anxiety and depression. I think there's been quite a heightened awareness of children and young people's mental health as well, especially with the closure of schools, but also for students as well. I think an interesting thing is that the awareness of the impact of loneliness and isolation on people and their mental health and physical health as well. That's been acknowledged a lot more. And I think it's also, as humans, how, we are social animals and how we desperately need connection with others for our well-being. I've seen a lot of impact through the services that we deliver through Mind on people who've lost their usual support networks, but also for all of us who, we don't have that face-to-face, well, maybe we do have the face-to-face at Zoom, but we don't have the physical link with family members and friends, etc., and some of the support networks that we all have. And I've been really struck by how many people are having a markedly worse experience than others. People who have lost loved ones, losing their jobs, their homes, things like domestic abuse in the home, and impact on different groups such as BAME communities, just to name a few things. And I do feel that we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg in terms of the economic impacts on people's mental health. But I would say, that said, there are some positives. I think in general, we've embraced the digital sphere. I know I have, I've had to. A year ago, I would have been really worried about my children being online so much and scrolling, etc. And now, well, basically, I spend all my days online and then my social life online. But on a more serious note, I think there's an increased awareness of our humanity and our need to connect. And I've seen locally and nationally and internationally a huge increase in community spirit, altruism, and most of all, kindness. Random acts of kindness and lots of different acts of kindness I've been bowled over by. It's fantastic to see.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you're definitely right there. There's been a lot more sort of kindness, I guess, in the world, and people kind of reaching out and helping others. I know you're obviously going to go into your presentation, but just before we do that, we are going to run a poll for you guys to kind of get involved with us a little bit. So I think you could probably see a poll somewhere on your screen at the moment. Yes, there it is. So we wanted to ask, what describes your current position? Are you employed, working from home, employed, working from the office, furloughed, recently made redundant, looking for work, or are you a student? So just take a couple of seconds there to answer that for us. I don't know whether we'll see the results there. I don't know if they're going to come up on screen, but if not, we can follow them at the end. So Lisa, we can, if you want to go ahead and kind of, oh, here we go, sorry. Right, so obviously, yeah, a lot of us working from home, still employed, which is kind of good to see in some ways, because obviously our industry, events industry, has really, really been affected. So yeah, interesting to see that. So Lisa, I'll let you take away.
Thank you, and yeah, welcome everybody. Before I kick off, I'd just like to do a quick check-in with everyone. So what I'd like to ask is, what's the weather like in your head at the moment? Is it sunny? Is it rainy? Thundery? Sunny with clouds? Just have a little think, and just have a think about what the weather is like in your head, and be as creative as you want. Okay, the reason I've asked you to do that is just to do a quick emotionally visual technique to check in with yourself, to just check in with how you're feeling. And this is just a really nice, quick way of checking in with yourself in the morning and in the evening, just to see where you're at. So today I'm going to be kind of running through really quite quickly in 10 minutes, an overview of some of the evidence-based things that we can all do to support ourselves, and look at how we can counteract chronic stress and improve our well-being. It's only a snapshot, and I appreciate that mental health and well-being is a pretty broad and big area, but I do really welcome your questions at the end, and I'll either be able to answer or signpost, depending on what you ask. Oops, hang on. Oops, just having a slight technical problem. I can't move my slides. Oops, Daisy, sorry about that. Okay, talking about embracing technology, I still have the occasional blip. Okay, so the reason I put a picture of a boat on this screen is to acknowledge that we're all in the same storm, but we're all in really different boats. I mean, some of us are really lucky and we're in a cruise liner, which is safe and stable. Some of us are in sailboats being blown around with the wind, and some of us are in rowing boats or dinghies or rafts, and we're vulnerable to the elements. There are lots of different impacts on us at the moment, and very much impacting on our mental health and well-being. So I want to talk through some practical evidence-based things we can do to support ourselves. And I frequently get a lot of research reports from National Mind, and they've recently said that at least a third of us are reporting, for those who are working from home, are reporting substantial stress. So what's your current reality? And it's different for all of us, but in general, a lot of people are finding that they are constantly switched on, where, as Adam talked about, we are in sort of fight or flight mode. We're switched on, often having problems sleeping, we're sort of running at hyper speed, but there's also a consistent feeling of unease, worry or fear. And in relation to that, I just wanted to show you a little diagram, the pressure performance curve. And this is a nice way of showing how our current realities and pressures and stress impacts on us. And as you can see, our optimum is between the sort of comfort zone and the stretch zone. We all work best somewhere within that zone. And as Adam said, we all need some pressure to get out of bed in the morning, but we generally work best in the comfort, to the edge of the comfort and the stretch zone. And I also would like to acknowledge, as events professionals, often you are working at full stretch. You're constantly looking for possible problems and responding to them, which means that you are very much switched on. You're hypervigilant, and very often you're experiencing a stress response. And then when stressed, our body, we basically think we're under attack and we switch to fight or flight mode. And all those chemicals that are released and hormones prepare us for physical action. And, you know, our bodies are amazing. This is great in the short term, but if it's consistent, you're then shifting into the strain and then you're shifting into the crisis mode. And it can have some pretty detrimental effects on us short term and also long term. So some of the signs of stress, they can be emotional. So that can be becoming easily agitated or frustrated or feeling overwhelmed or moody, struggling to relax, quieten your mind. I know the one for me is, a real sign for me is I lose my sense of humour. I know then I have to attend to looking after myself. Cognitive, it can be constant worrying, racing thoughts, forgetfulness, disorganisation, poor judgment, lots of different things. And physical, again, quite a broad, it can be things like low energy, headaches, upset stomach, chest pain, rapid heartbeat, aches and pains, insomnia. I mean, these all have huge impacts on our physical health as well, and can impact on our, for example, cardiovascular health and the increase in type 2 diabetes, just to name a few things. Behavioural, it can be changes in appetite, you know, eating too little, eating too much, procrastination, avoiding responsibilities, maybe increased use of alcohol or cigarettes. You know, there are lots of different things that we use as coping mechanisms. Sadly, the flip side of chronic stress is anxiety and depression and a host of other mental health problems. So we generally work on the basis of prevention is better than cure. So in relation to that, it's about preventing stress escalating and creating some helpful habits. This is also that we can buffer stress and look at long-term prevention. And it's about having a think about how we can all reduce our stress levels, how to reduce those pressures as they're building up. And as Adam really helpfully pointed out about the stress bucket, it's about taking action to calm our primitive mind, to calm the amygdala. And the amygdala, you know, it's great in the short term. You know, we respond to, you know, the polar bear or whatever, but it's incredibly unhealthy long term with chronic stress. But there are a lot of things we can do to improve our well-being. I mean, that can be range from rest and relaxation to talking to people that we trust, to good time management around boundarying your home and work life and making sure that you do get relaxation time and doing something you enjoy. So in terms of sort of an evidence-based approach, I'm just going to introduce you to the 5 ways to well-being. And this was developed back in 2008 by the New Economics Foundation, funded by the government. And the NHS have very much embraced this. There's a lot of information on the NHS website and also the National Mind website. And if you want to look at how it was developed, the New Economics Foundation website have a lot of information. But there are 5 areas. And it's a really great public health message, a bit like, you know, eat your 5 veggies or fruit a day, but this is a bit more substantial and it's all evidence-based. There's a huge plethora of evidence for each of these 5 areas. And it's about what we can do to support ourselves. And in terms of the evidence base, it's about strengthening resilience, which is preventative, and combating difficulties when they arise, which is intervention. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I will happily talk more about it later in questions, but I would signpost you to the NHS website, National Mind website, or New Economics Foundation website. But what I'd like to say is it's about building these factors into our daily lives. So with that said, I'd like to do a few takeaways. So 1-minute tools. First one is box breathing. This is a really straightforward but really effective way of resetting our breathing. When you're stressed, you tend to breathe from the top of your diaphragm. When you're relaxed, you tend to breathe deeper into the lower part of your diaphragm. And what's really helpful about box breathing is it resets your breathing into its normal rhythm. It helps to clear your mind, relax your body, etc., and also improves focus. And it has a really good physiological effect on your autonomous nervous system by shifting your breath from the fight or flight mode into a more relaxing mode. So with further ado, and you don't have to do this, but I'm just going to talk it through. If you'd like to, I invite you to do this with me. I'm going to do 2 rounds, so 30 seconds. And I'd like to invite you to do it just to get a sense of how it feels. You can do this anywhere. You can do it at your desk, in your kitchen, wherever. If you can, try and sit up straight and keep your feet on the floor. Okay, so I'm going to invite you to either close your eyes or just lower your gaze and breathe in through your nose whilst counting to 4 slowly. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now hold your breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. And gently exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. And hold your breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. And once more, last time. Breathe in through your nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath and count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And slowly exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. And hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. And just breathe normally. The reason I do that is just to give you some really simple, straightforward takeaways. I mean, this is something you can do, as I say, you could be stood in the kitchen, you could be stood anywhere, or you could be sat at your desk. It's something that you can do on a regular basis. And also change your posture. If you can, stand up. It improves your breathing. Straighten your back. I don't know about anybody else, but if I'm over my laptop all day, I tend to go into a kind of a hunch. Try and roll your shoulders back. It improves your breathing, but it also gives your body space for all your organs to function properly. Change position. I would say try and get up from your desk and move around for a minute every 20 minutes. It really resets your framework. And also look up. It's a really simple action, but it will affect your mood and how you think. And if you can, as an added bonus, get outside and look up. There's some really interesting neuroscience on how this impacts on our well-being. And also some simple everyday tips. Drink water, keep hydrated. If you can, really try and eat well. Everything is connected. Mental health and physical health, it's all really connected. Prioritize sleep. I think there's a lot of insomnia, a lot of sleep issues at the moment. And I would recommend looking at the NHS website or National Mind website in terms of sleep hygiene and good approaches for that. If you can, get outside. Even if it's 10 minutes or half an hour, try and get outside. We need our vitamin D, but also we need to see nature. And the other one is laugh more. I can't believe the amount of silly memes and YouTube videos I've watched during lockdown. But whatever works for you, find something that makes you laugh. You'll get all the really good chemicals, the endorphins kicking in when you're laughing. So in terms of takeaways, I'd like to say spot the early signs early. It's very key to preventing stress escalating. Please make time for daily positive habits. Building better mental health habits will change the quality of your life, and taking action is really key to active coping. So my message is do one thing. Do one thing for a week. See how it goes. It might be going for a 10-minute walk, standing outside for 10 minutes, or doing some breathing. If it doesn't work, try something else. If it does work, brilliant, embed it and do another thing. But in terms of the theory of change, baby steps is the way to go. Don't try and change everything overnight because it's intimidating and less likely to become part of your regular habits. Do one thing, embed it, and then move on to something else. But I do acknowledge it is hard. We're in a pandemic, So I think my sort of message is, you know, you're just doing the best you can at the moment, and that is absolutely fine. Be kind to yourself. You know, self-compassion is really important. Be kind to others and do one thing. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Lisa. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for such an insightful presentation. And I think it's definitely something we can all learn from that. I can see the time is sort of running away with us at the moment, but we did have one question that came through, and that was about, we were talking about acts of kindness at the beginning of your presentation, and obviously in the light of the pandemic and the restrictions and not being able to go out and meet people and everything like that. Have you got an example of an act of kindness which is COVID safe that we could perhaps implement? I know there's one thing that springs to the top of my mind, and actually I did this a couple of weeks ago. I actually sent a bunch of flowers to a friend who had a really particularly hard day. So obviously, yeah, I would love to have gone and seen her and delivered those flowers, but you know, through the internet was able to do that. So that's kind of one example, but I don't know if you've got any other examples, Lisa.
Yeah, I mean, I make a point of calling people every day, often not on screen because we're zoomed out or whatever, but just checking in with colleagues who I know are struggling, or friends, just to have a 10-minute just catch up and just say hi. And for people who I know are struggling, I'll text them on a regular basis just to say, you know, I'm thinking of you. You're not alone. I am thinking of you. The other thing is, when I go for a walk, this is going to sound silly, but I smile at people. Yeah. You know, or I say good morning. And it's lovely that people do respond. Not always, but they do respond. And it's just acknowledging that connection, that human connection. It doesn't support. But also in terms of small acts of kindness, I'd say small acts of kindness for yourself as well. Yeah.
It's all very well looking out for others, but also you need to look after yourself as well. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Lisa, for that. That's great. I'm going to bring back in Adam and Rob to kind of give sort of the last sort of 10 minutes or so, kind of a chat, general chat. But we are going to do just a quick another poll if we can, just to kind of include you guys in again. If we can put the poll up. So yeah, so on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most relaxed and positive, how are you feeling today on that scale? I'm going to ask the panel, how are you feeling today on a scale of 1 to 10? Rob?
I'm a 7 today.
Okay.
Actually, no, I'm going to go 8.
Oh, okay. Very good. Very good. Adam?
Yeah, I'm probably an 8/9. Probably, you know, increased a little bit having delivered my session and not having to worry about that anymore. But yeah.
And Lisa, what about yourself?
Yeah, I'd say probably about an 8. It would normally be more, but I think I've told you guys that I had water flooding through my ceiling last night and the night before, so it's not as high as it would normally be.
Lisa had a particularly bad day yesterday, for sure. Excellent. So the results are in. So generally, people are on around a 7. So that's pretty good. That's pretty high in the grand scheme of things. I probably would be around 7 or 8. And I think for me, having said I'm a 7 or 8, I think the reason for that is because I'm talking at the moment. I'm talking to people. I'm kind of interacting with others, and I think that's a huge thing. And as you said, Lisa, it is about picking up the phone or talking to people. But from a commercial point of view, what I wanted to talk about, and obviously there are some of us that are still working, but we are working from home. But going forward, with employers, how much now do you think mental health and well-being needs to be incorporated into an organization? I actually I saw a stat actually, which was really interesting. It was Deloitte carried out a survey pre-pandemic actually, and they had a survey of 600 firms. And they wanted to ask employers measure how many employers were measuring employee stress levels, and they were saying that at the moment it was like 16%. This was in 2019, but they estimated that by 2021 it would go up to about 53%. they would incorporate more measures to manage people's stress levels. But actually, that's interesting. We're now in 2021, and I wonder if that's going to exceed even more. But from an employer's perspective, Rob, I kind of wanted to get your kind of take on that. And you know, you kind of going to be more incorporating more mental health wellbeing into your organization.
Absolutely. And it does, there are, you know, a lot of employers see this as, they do see it as non-essential namby-pamby. I've seen that written, and that strikes fear into my heart, particularly in the events industry. I think there's two main points I want to make. We have to stop talking about functioning at 110% or 120%, or working at the maximum flat out all the time, as per Lisa's curve. And she rightly identified that as event professionals, we operate in at a higher, or normally at a higher level of pressure and work than many other people do. And we all have to stop kidding ourselves that we can operate at that level all the time. We can't. We need to be realistic about the amount of work which we take on. I actually wrote this in my blog. It seems this idea, oh yeah, I'm ready, I'm 110% ready for this, seems to be some sort of soundbite that perhaps we've picked up from reality TV shows over the past 10 years, where people say, yeah, I'm ready for this, bring it on, I really want it. And actually, if we were a car, we would not be driving all the way with our foot on the floor, because if we were, the engine would conk out pretty soon. Well, I assume it would anyway. I'm not a mechanic, but that's just my assumption. But this comes back to the commercials of the business, and I know that for too long, event business owners have undersold themselves, either by underestimating time, or not charging enough for their services. And it's really important that if we do that and we charge the right amount for our services, then we can resource projects correctly. And it's overstretching resource. It's certainly in the agency business model in which many of us operate. It's when we put too much pressure on resources that these things happen. You know, I remember 6 years ago now, an agency I was working for did a farmer tender, and the procurement fought hard on rate. But the problem is that the clients wanted a 5-star service, but procurement weren't prepared to pay for a 5-star service, and the agency dropped their fee so much that it was impossible for us to deliver the service level because we didn't have enough resources. So there was constant frustration with the client saying, we're not getting enough from you, because our the expectations which we had laid out as the agency couldn't be met. So we have really important questions to answer, and real responsibility as business owners and negotiators to make sure that we are winning profitable business. And the hardest thing to do, believe me, and I still make the mistake now, the hardest thing to do is to walk away from business when the rate is too cheap. It's the hardest thing to do ever.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you make some really, really good points there, Rob. In terms of kind of looking after our workforce and stuff, and making sure that we're looking after ourselves. Adam, how are you kind of talking to organizations and how to implement this? And
yeah, definitely, it's quite interesting. I mean, I keep using the example of the both the British cycling team and the World Cup rugby team that won back whenever it was, and the that kind of just marginal gains, you know, across the team. If you can just help your team be a bit more relaxed, perform a bit better, and that kind of thing. And I totally agree with Rob, but you know, unfortunately, so often there are so many senior people in organizations where it still comes down the bottom line and making money and that kind of thing. So actually, on the one hand, I've got that softly, gently sell of talking about positive stuff and how help the workforce and that kind of thing. And then the other thing is that kind of, look, you know, if all your team perform 10% better because they're a bit more relaxed, that's gonna help the business and that kind of thing. And it's quite interesting seeing I've both via EventWell, but also personally, I'm doing some group hypnotherapy sessions, which is just an opportunity for people to gather and have a little bit of a session on positive change. And I launched, I'm doing one throughout February for 4 weeks, and I launched it just a couple of days ago. And I mentioned it to a friend who runs an agency. And I thought she'd probably sign up for it. But then I noticed actually she'd signed up the whole team, you know, seeing the benefit and that kind of thing. And I thought that was really, really lovely when it, you know, that she'd gone, well, actually, and hopefully her team will join. She signed them all up. She's hoping they'll join, and it's obviously down to them if they take that chance and that opportunity. But, you know, I think it depends on the businesses you're talking to, but I think you've got to have that balance of the softly, the important mental health aspect, but also some of the commercial stuff's really, really important for some businesses and just can't get away from it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's so lovely to hear that actually somebody has taken the time to sign up their team, whether they want to get involved. That's, as you say, that's up to them. And I think, you know, I read an article recently that I think there's still quite a lot of employers out there that think that just by pinging an email with a slide of how to reduce stress levels is their kind of well-being strategy for their organization. Well, actually just pinging someone an email is, and are they going to really read it? You know, I think it's all about interaction with others. And obviously from your point of view, Lisa, as well, obviously you've delivered a great presentation to us, but are you kind of, obviously you working with organizations, are you seeing that they're kind of I suppose investing more in bringing someone like yourself in to talk about mental health? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a broad playing field in terms of some are really taking it on board, some are a bit scared, not really sure where to go, and some just really haven't picked the ball up yet. I mean, our approach is we use a kind of strategic, operational and tactic approach. And we use the Thriving at Work standards. So we actually walk people through of how you can do it from top down and bottom up. But we also do a lot of work with line managers. They're the people who are interacting with their team daily. So we do a lot of work of how to support your staff, how to have possibly difficult conversations, how to signpost, etc. But we also talk about the business imperative. There's a really big business imperative to supporting your staff. If you've got a quarter of your workforce who are present but not really present, so presenteeism, so they're not working as well as they could be, that's got a huge impact on the business. And it's about being able to bring your whole self to work and supporting all the aspects of people. So yeah, some businesses are really taking it on board, but you know, I think there's still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can see that we're coming up to the hour of 11 o'clock now. We do have one question. I'm going to direct it to Rob just to kind of sort of finish off really. But we had a question that said, other than raising awareness for workforce mental health, what other positive outcomes do you see for the future of events businesses due to the pandemic? So Rob, I'll let you finish that off.
Very interesting question, Chris. Quite a tough one, actually. I think you know, positive things for the events industry, certainly a great understanding of the effects of poor mental health on work, but I think a general understanding of how we work. Anyway, I think a lot of businesses have had let me go back a bit. Event managers are very good, want lots of control. So event businesses have struggled for a long time with letting go of control, you know, meaning that, you know, we've had to allow people to work from home. And I've certainly found that, you know, with my team working from home, they've been incredibly productive. I don't need to be micromanaging all the time. I do need to check up on them and make sure, you know, check they're happy and that they're healthy. But actually, I think that's, for me, and I hope the biggest realization for the events industry is that we don't need as much control over our staff as we have traditionally had. Now, we're going to carry on talking about this for up to another 15 minutes, but we as usual with our webinars, we have an official finish time, and then we extend a little bit just in case. So there's a couple of final words from me. Thank you very much to Louise for facilitating, and for Lisa and Adam for speaking. I think I want to make a particular mention to those on the survey where we asked how you're feeling at the moment. There were quite a few people who gave answers between 2 and 5, and I really want to say to those people, please don't suffer alone. Please don't. Please call a friend, call anybody. You know, Louise offered herself. Mind is there. Adam is there. I'm there. I'm always happy to speak to people. I'm not a trained mental health first aider like Louise is, but please don't feel you're alone. Everybody, whether they admit it or not, everybody is struggling at the moment. So the fact you're feeling between 2 and 5, that's the sign. If you answer that question there, that's the sign that you need to reach out to somebody, and you need to share that if you're not already. Our next webinar will be at the end of February. We've got a great program lined up this year. We're going to be talking about managing risk in event strategy. As we start thinking about live events again, everything's up in the air. None of us are fans of Boris Johnson because he just keeps creating nightmares for us. We don't know when we're going to be able to meet again live, but we have to plan for we might be able to meet live, but we also may need to work online. So how do we plan for that, and how do we manage that risk? One of our speakers is going to be David Parker for Royal College of Physicians, who sits quite uniquely in the industry. He's both an event owner, he runs events for the RCP, but is also a venue owner as well. So he's going to be speaking along with my colleague Guy Timpson, talking about the commercial aspects for sponsorship from that. Next slide, please. Thank you. We also have the event training company. We have 3 courses running at the moment, a couple more to follow soon, including introduction to event marketing. So please register. They're only £49 each. They're 2 hours long, and we've had incredible feedback. So thank you very much for that. Was there anything else I meant to mention, Tara? Oh yes, another plug. Sorry, I'm really bad at doing this. Brightelm one of the products we offer is a webinar management service, where we can run a webinar for you on your behalf if you don't have time or the resources or the confidence, and we can take that all away from you from just £500 per webinar. So please get in contact with us via the website, or via email, or phone, or traditional phone even. How about that? And one final reminder, please donate to either Bristol Mind or EventWell, or both, to support the fantastic work that those organizations do. I think we should now go back to just carrying on the discussion a bit, and I was very interested in Chris's question actually about future of the events industry, and I wanted to go to Adam, because Adam, you also sit across both topics here, both as an events professional from a PR perspective, and also now well-being. What's your vision, if you like, of how things will change?
I think what you talked about is one of the biggest things. People just giving the trust to their teams and that kind of thing, and people working from home, and home working environments are not necessarily the best thing. I think that's really, really worth acknowledging. I was talking to someone the other day, and she's a primary school teacher, and the only space she could find to deliver lessons to about 25 kids was kneeling on the floor at the foot of her bed with her laptop resting on a book and using her mirror like a whiteboard. You know, that's the only space in her house. She's got absolutely no delineation between personal and work, and she's really really struggling. You know, and she told me she was like a 9 before Christmas, and halfway through the latest lockdown, dealing with that is far lower, and that kind of thing. It's really tough. And I think that's one of the things that, you know, we are moving much more, being able to work from home, and that's great in so many ways. It cuts down on travel time. I've got a friend who was commuting 2 hours each way every morning, that kind of thing, and that's huge positives. But we've got to balance it. You know, there isn't that need to be in the office all the time. My first role in the events industry was in an agency, and there was very much that, you know, expected to be there from practically 7 in the morning till 9 o'clock at night, and if you left early, you know, it didn't seem right. So people working smarter, working from home is great. I think the venues side of things, the supplier side of things, it's maybe a bit harder because there is more of a feeling that you kind of need to be on site, particularly obviously for operationally when we eventually go back on site, but also for venue sales. But at the moment, you know, they're also seeing different ways of working. It's interesting seeing the, you know, 360-degree tours and that kind of thing were already a thing beforehand. Now they're the only option. You know, it's the same with estate agents and house sales. You know, so much can be done virtually. I think we've just got to select the right bits, but not lose that heart and soul of the personal contact and being with people. And that balance is where we as an industry have to find our future. When do we still need to meet? When is it right to meet? When is it frankly actually not that necessary and it's fine to do something online?
I've seen way too many MDs rubbing their FDs, financial directors, sorry, rubbing their hands with the fact they can reduce or do away with entire offices, but they're forgetting about the homes aren't built for people to work in from home. And I think particularly if you're older and you have a house and you have the space, perhaps you're lucky enough to have your own box room or own office or a shed at the bottom of the garden which you've converted, which I get very jealous about, then that's great. But actually, if you're younger, you may be house sharing with up to 4 other people, and you know, that's not a place conducive to work. Also, if you're sitting at the dining room table on a dining room chair all day, the damage it's doing to your physicality is horrendous. I've just started a new study book. There's my two challenges for this year. One is to pick up the cello again, which I've done, and I've been playing for 3 weeks now, and I've got a teacher, and I absolutely love it. I've really fallen back in love with it. It's brilliant.
Are you going to do a concert for us when you're?
No way. To be fair, I'm quite happy with the sound I'm producing, but I'm a long way off of that. But the other thing is, I've just started reading the Frampton Method, which it was introduced to me by a friend of mine, and it's the theory. It's all about the theory and exercises to support the theory that we're not built to sit on chairs. We're built to stand or crouch, and actually the spine is the most important part of the body, and needs to be protected. But the best way to protect it is not by sitting down and resting in a traditional sense. It's actually by working the muscles around it and out to the extremities to support the body properly. So actually, we should be really standing all day working, or and crouching down to relax. I haven't got that far yet. I'm quite far from that at the moment, but I'm really enjoying it, and it's a different approach to pulling weights and doing squats and all those horrible things which we all hate doing.
I love them.
Oh, okay. Well, you're just weird, but that's okay.
No, I think it's really interesting you say that, and I think, and Lisa touched on it in her presentation, the fact that it's movement, it's that we should be moving around, definitely. Whether you're standing up or working, which I think actually a lot of people are starting to do now. I've seen a couple of interesting office setups. I think that's really really good that people are kind of embracing that. What was that book, Rob? Can you type it in, or
it's the Frampton Method. I'll find a. Yeah, I'll type it into the chat. Just let me find it a minute.
I'll stick this one. This is called Spark, which is another. I'm not sure if that's reversing my camera. Is that reading the right way around?
Yeah. How exercise will improve the performance of, what was it?
How exercise will improve the performance of your brain. And it's a really, really fascinating book about the positive impact of movement, and there's some incredible case studies in there. The most interesting is he talks in the introduction about a school district in, I think it's just outside Chicago off the top of my head, where they had someone who came in and started looking at sport from a different point of view. And I don't understand the American PE system enough to have fully understood the nuance, but it basically sounded like beforehand, if you ran the 100 meters quicker, you got better grades. Whereas what this chap was coming in and getting the students to do was wear sort of heart rate monitors and that kind of thing, so he could judge who was putting the most effort in. And then they were looking at the equivalent exam grades for those kids and that kind of thing, and just showing those that were willing to make the effort and literally go the extra mile were then having more success in exams and in their studies. And they were introducing like dance classes as part of it and that kind of thing, and having things where the kids would have to go and dance with a partner and learn one new thing about that person whilst they were dancing and that kind of thing, and just all these little things they were doing. And it's just a really fascinating book. There's a big section on kind of neuroscience and that kind of thing, and the chemicals in the brain and that, but fascinating book. And it's moving, and it, he's talking about more strenuous physical exercise for a lot of it, but just moving, just walking, just getting out and about is just so useful and so important.
Can I just echo that? There's a lot of neuroscience to show that if we're standing up, we think differently, process things differently. Our prefrontal cortex, the cognition, we process differently, and it's a whole body thing as opposed to just being in our heads. But also I'd say, in terms of exercise, do something you really like, otherwise you won't keep doing it. I mean, my thing, I'm sorry to share, but my thing is, if it's raining outside, I'll put music on in my kitchen and I'll have a really good dance.
Oh, good.
It's just finding something you enjoy and makes you happy.
Do you know, actually, I shouldn't say this, but I had a dance in the bathroom this morning. I put for whatever reason, and I don't normally listen to the radio, but I had Virgin Radio on this morning, and they were playing some really great disco classics.
Yeah.
It started my day at 8 o'clock, which is great. I like the examples you move. We're talking about movement and exercise and what have you, but and it kind of comes back to implementing, I suppose, mindfulness and things into organisations. But I don't know if any of you have watched it, but on Netflix, The Last Dance, the documentary about the Chicago Bulls and how they became like 5-time champions of the NBA. But basically, I mean, it's a great 10-part documentary. But their coach, Phil Jackson, I think his name is, he was heavy on sort of yoga and mindfulness, and he kind of incorporated that into the team and kind of completely sort of changed their mindset. And then they became, champions. So it's just really, really interesting about how, whether you're a coach or an employer or business owner, you can incorporate things into your team, and the changes that it makes is phenomenal. So it is really worth investing in those things. I don't know if anybody else has got any other examples that they've seen through the pandemic.
Well, another thing I'd say, in terms of what you're saying about mindfulness, I mean, there's a huge body of evidence to show the positive impacts it has on us. But I do find through talking with people, some people really struggle to, sit still for 10 minutes and do a meditative practice. So what I'd say is do active mindfulness. If you're going for a walk, spend a couple of minutes doing mindfulness so that you're using all your senses, you're focusing on your breathing. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be a walk. It could be, washing up your dishes, but mindfully do it. So slow everything down. Feel, the water and the heat and all the rest, but use all your senses, and it's just as effective on reducing your alpha and beta brain waves and calming things down.
Totally advocate that as well. I am awful at sitting still. I I'm terrible at it. I complain that my son is always full of energy and won't stop, and this that and the other, and everyone points out to me, I wonder where he gets that from, Adam. But yeah, I mean, my passion is canoeing. I love canoeing, and just at the moment, because I live a bit far from the water, I don't think it counts as local for me to go. But when I can go, just being able to just drift along down a river, a canal, or whatever, and just feel that calm whilst I'm moving my arms a bit, and that kind of thing makes a huge difference.
Yeah, water is calming. I find water really calming anyway. Somebody's popped in the chat, actually. Daphne, thank you for popping in the chat. She's has been taking up online art classes, which is started as something to do, but it's turned into a great social creative thing that she looks forward to every week. So yeah, it just takes doing what, and again, it comes back to doing one thing or being grateful for one thing. It only takes one thing to do. And that can really impact your mindset, for sure. We're coming up to the 11th, well, we are at 11:15, so I don't know whether we want to kind of start wrapping up, but from my point of view, and I just want to reiterate what Rob said, you know, thank you to everyone that joined today. I know, you know, topic of mental health and well-being can be quite difficult for some people, and obviously Rob did mention about there are some of us that are feeling low at the moment, you know, people saying there were 2-3 positive levels, but as Rob says, I'm a mental health first aider, so if anybody does want to chat, I'm here and I'm ready to listen. So but it's been great. Thank you for having me on today, and it's you know, I could continue this conversation well into for another hour or so for sure, but yeah, thank you very much, Adam and Lisa, and thanks Rob again as well.
Thank you very much, Louise, and thank you also to Tara, who ran the webinar, who does a fantastic job, and I love working with her at Brightelm. Thanks very much, everybody, and we'll see you at the end of February.